I'm pretty sure a lot of people do this, at least people that love movies, but they keep their ticket stubs, a little paper memento of that time they went to go see blank, 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 whatever it might be. Well, I used to do this quite a bit, and, I don't do it anymore, but I did stumble across a batch of them. I've thrown out so many over the years, and this batch seems to be largely centered around the 2000s. So I said, hey, why don't we do a tournament based on that? So it's going to have to be divided into three parts because there were so many tickets. And I'm pretty sure this damn bracket thing always excluded one ticket. And I don't know which movie it chose to exclude from each part, but whatever. It's as close to complete as I could get it. But anyway, last tournament went pretty well. And more importantly, my boy Johnny liked it. And if Johnny likes it, I like it. God damn it. If you haven't checked out Johnny Likes, that's probably the only review channel besides Chris Stuckman's that I visit. Unless you're counting Al, in which case I ironically visit his movie reviews. But Johnny Likes, top notch. Love his stuff. You love nostalgic, especially in 90s centric reviews. Go check out Johnny Likes. You know why? Because I like Johnny Likes, damn it. Anyway, he liked that tournament, so I'm going to do this tournament. And we're starting off strong, somewhat. Definitely strong on one side, and that's the first face-to-face is Darkness Falls. That's right, that Tooth Fairy movie that people forgot and doesn't have The Rock in it. And then House of Flying Daggers. Look, I'm straight up here, man. House of Flying Daggers is going to win. It's a beautiful movie. There was a little wuxia craze after Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out that kind of swept Hollywood for a little bit there. And thankfully, they weren't trying to remake a lot of them. They were importing them. And of all those, House of Flying Daggers is my favorite. Beautiful movie, beautifully shot. A poeticism to the visuals. The cast is wonderful. It's gonna freaking win, especially against Darkness Falls, which, granted, at the time, I kind of enjoyed. It's fun. But, House, guy, that one goes ahead. Now, I'm going to tell you this. Some of these movies I haven't seen since I saw them in the theater. So I'm going to have to go off my opinion of them, since that last viewing. Some I've seen afterwards, but maybe not many times. I don't know. I'm just going off my last impression of the movies, okay? Next up, Open Range, Kevin Costner's classic, in my opinion, Western, and Clerks 2. Basically Kevin Smith having to return to the U.S. universe because, his movies outside of that sucked nuts. So, look, like a lot of cinephiles, I have a fondness for Kevin Smith, but it's a fondness that has died because, shit, man. His movies suck now, with a couple of exceptions. Big stinkers, man, and not even returning to this universe has proven to be a good thing for me. Now, Clerks 2, I did thoroughly enjoy, but I am going off that last viewing. I may revisit it and hate it. I don't know, man. But it's not going to win against Open Range, which I think is an underappreciated masterpiece. A slow boil Western, character heavy, that it culminates in one of the best shootouts put to freaking film. Really, Kevin Costner deserves a lot more credit for this than he gets. Open Range, baby. That's winning. And I will fight you if you even try to argue that should be different. Next up, Darkness versus Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, and the Cradle of Life. Look, I have a fondness for the cheesiness of Tomb Raider, the Tomb Raider movies with Angelina Jolie. I accept that they lick massive dongs. But there's a, and in fact, this is Chris Stuckman's point of view too, and I agree with it 100%. They have they still retain that weird 90s flavor that, blockbusters used to have. And there's something that kind of strikes a chord with me about that in terms of fondness. That being said, I did say they suck dongs, so there is that. This is the better one of the two, I'll grant him that. But Darkness is a very little seen, underappreciated flick. You had the involvement of Paco Plaza and all these Spanish types that have really made an impression in horror. I'm going to pick Darkness, even though I have only seen it twice, once in the theater and once in the unrated cut. But I remember it having a very eerie atmosphere. It's not for everyone. It's an absolute slow boil. If your attention span is Al Smithian, you're out of there, bro. You're not going to like that movie. But I quite enjoyed it. And to be fair, it's fighting Tomb Raider here, so darkness wins. Just saying. Next up, Casino Royale. Easily one of the best reboots to a series ever. In this case, it being the James Bond series. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I believe 2003 remake of the classic Tobe Hooper movie. Now, I remember liking Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the theater, and I have always kind of been like, yeah, it was a fun time. But of course, it pales in comparison to the original. I'm just saying I enjoyed it as a film also. I revisited it recently, and boy howdy, let me tell you, I have to change my fucking opinion on that. Look, there's some stuff that's cool. You know, you can't go wrong casting R. Lee Ermey. There's some elements in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, this remake, that are cool. But the movie is so thin, and the characters are garbage. You know what I'm saying? They're fucking garbage. So whatever few saving elements there are in it, it's just not a good movie, man. I hate to say it, you know. One thing that I know a lot of people will hate about it out the gate is the cinematography, which ironically is the same guy that did, you know, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This looks very synthetic, you know, unlike that raw, gritty naturalness of the original. It wasn't good, man. Upon rewatching it, despite a few elements here and there kind of vibing, but even if it was good, it was gonna die with a shot to the freaking head, courtesy of James Bond himself, man. Casino Royale is an excellent reinvigoration of a character. It holds up incredibly well. It's gonna win. It's gonna freaking win, guy. Next up, we got a stinker. Transformers. That's a movie I saw in the theater. God damn it. Best thing about it was that little chihuahua in a cast. That's cool. And it's going up against Underworld, the third entry into the Underworld series, which of course has peaks and valleys. And this is one of the peaks. Rise of the Lycans, pretty damn cool, man. And also one of the few movies that Patrick Tatopoulos, the renowned effects meister, has directed. But this is basically a prequel to Underworld 1, so it allows you to ignore the shittiness of Underworld 2 and just watch this and part 1. And it's really good, man. Rona Mitra is kind of like a favorite of mine that doesn't get a lot of the kudos she should get since she's the star of it. That's pretty cool. It's just cool, man. It's a cool little movie, and it's definitely cooler than Transformers, which, man, I'll be fair enough to it. I'll say I haven't watched it since, but that's because I didn't want to watch it again. You know, and I give a lot of things a second watch, and it's just anytime I watch a Michael Bay Transformers movie, I want to die inside a little. I die inside a little, and I want to die inside a little more because they suck so bad. But I guess of the ones I remember, this one's the one that I remember being the best, quote unquote. But it sucked. So Underworld Rise of the Lycans, all the way, baby. Next up, the aforementioned Underworld Evolution, aka Underworld 2, versus Hostel. Oh, this is a face-off for the ages, isn't it? So Underworld Evolution, look, Celine is a cool, badass chick. There's something cool about watching badass chicks do badass stuff. There's some cool effects and stuff like that. But Underworld Evolution is one of those movies where you're like, man, they really dropped the ball. You know, everything that worked in the first one, they managed to just undo it and just make a kind of like a sloppy, uninteresting turd. She is naked in it, though, so there's that. But other than that, Evolution doesn't really hold much, you know, for me. Hostel is a movie, of course, you know, it's a cult favorite for a lot of people. And at one point, I was like, yeah, I enjoyed that movie. You know, I sure as hell wasn't deriding it for it being quote-unquote torture porn or anything like that. I was just like, that was a fun time, man. There was fun to be had, is what I thought. I recently revisited it like about a year ago. Jesus H. Christ, man. It is stinky. The humor is so goddamn puerile. and just obnoxious. I hated it, man. You know? I absolutely hated watching the movie and putting up with these characters. And, you know, you might argue these characters are intentionally made to be this way because, you know, they're going to get their comeuppance and they have to go through a cathartic experience. Yeah, that's all stuff in horror. However, it just managed to be so overbearingly obnoxious for such a long goddamn time that I almost wanted them to die. Nay, I did want them to die, and alas, one of them survived, so that stinks. That being said, I think I would rather watch Hostel over Underworld Evolution. Why? Because at least that culminates in some sort of something, whereas Evolution just leaves you feeling empty. So I'm going to pick Hostel, reluctantly though I may. Next up, Bruno, the Sacha Baron Cohen, satirical, pseudo-realistic, kind of mockumentary style follow-up to Borat. Bruno being one of his, in my opinion, one of his lesser characters. I think that was bound to date badly. I haven't watched this since then. I don't know if it retains any of the humor. But even then, I was like, this is a major step down from Borat. It didn't feel as incisive, as relevant as Borat did. Maybe it's more relevant now. I don't know. The social politics of LGBTQ plus community are very in the forefront now. So I don't know how it plays now, good or bad. Either way, then I was like, it's not as good as Borat. Even though I guess I found it enjoyable then. Apocalypto is a movie, however, that I love. I know some people are like, oh, it's not historically accurate. What historical movie is, first of all, guys? First, as a cinematic experience, Apocalypto fucking kicks ass. That is my concern here. And it's great. I love it. Everything about it is awesome. It's a harrowing journey. It's thrilling. It's visually rich. The characters are very well drawn out. They're very well portrayed, I should say. Anyway, effects, fantastic. Music, amazing. The direction is... Yes, Mel Gibson's a dickhead, but the guy can direct. That's what I'm getting at. Apocalypto's going to win, guy. It's just going to win. Alright, next up we're facing Dawn of the Dead, the James Gunn remake, which is pretty good. Pretty damn good, I gotta say. Of course, I still love the Romero one the most, but I'm not going to be up here on some little bandwagon shitting on something that Zack Snyder made or that James Gunn wrote in this case. I'm just not. I like it. It's a damn good little remake, except for that baby scene. That kind of sucks. But anyway, and it's going up against Iron Man, which of course started the MCU, which is now a thing we should regret. It's become a monstrosity. But that was a good movie, man. Little Iron Man there. If it came down to it, to picking one to watch, I've seen Dawn of the Dead more times than I have Iron Man, even though I enjoy Iron Man quite a bit. I'm going to pick Dawn of the Dead. It's just more in my lane. I love horror. And it's a damn good little remake, so I'm going to go with Dawn, baby. The scale alone is pretty cool in Dawn. Next up, an unlikely face-off here. We got Oliver Stone's W versus Blade 2. Now, I got to admit that watching W in the theater was pretty weird because, the controversy with George Bush. God, I almost wish we had that instead of what we have now. But back then, everybody was like, Bush sucks. And I agree. He blew massive nards. But Oliver Stone's approach, and Oliver Stone was very critical of Bush at the time. Ironically, I think he'd support him now. He's changed dramatically in terms of his politics. But his approach to Bush was kind of making him lovably dumb. And that was an interesting way to portray a very hated person at the time. So there was a weird charm to this portrayal, which was very well done by Brolin. I really enjoyed W. It ended up making a very different, giving me a very different look at this guy that wielded power over America. That being said, Blade 2's fucking kick-ass, bro. And if we're going to face off Wesley Snipes against Bush, I'm going to pick Wesley all day long. Wesley Snipes as Blade is Blade. You know what I'm saying? I've read comics all my life, and I liked Blade before, but after Wesley Snipes played Blade, I didn't give a shit about old Blade. I just wanted Wesley Snipes to be Blade forever. And alas, he is not. But for two movies, it was really awesome for him to be Blade. And this was the last time he was awesome as Blade. So I'm going to pick Blade. I don't give a shit who he's facing. I'm picking Blade. Next up, The Last Exorcism, a Eli Roth production, which I think is where Eli should stay, producing stuff, helping up-and-coming directors do stuff. Because his movies, let me tell you, Hostel was not the last time I was like, man, I gotta rethink this guy. Anyway, Last Exorcism, very cool, original, found footage style take on exorcisms, exorcism movies in general. Really enjoyed the shit out of it. Versus Hannibal Rising, a fourth entry into the Hannibal series, which started with Silence of the Lambs. Fifth, if you're including Manhunter, which, I mean, you shouldn't because that got readapted. But Hannibal Rising was basically like an origin story for Hannibal. And let me tell you, that's a bad idea out the gate, man. This thing shouldn't have even been a novel, much less a movie. You just don't demystify such a profoundly interesting, morbid character like that. You got to keep him behind the shadows a little bit. You got to keep your audience always guessing where he's at. You don't just give him like a sympathetic backstory. And this is what this tried. Now, I'm going to say, I forget his name, but the cat that played Hannibal in this unfortunately died in a tragic accident, but he did a good job. The cast is good. You know what I'm saying? It's just the movie is unnecessary garbage, man. It's never exciting. It's never interesting. It feels very dull to watch. I mean, the guy's literally killing Nazis in it. If I remember correctly, they're Nazis. Anyway, some sort of scum. And eating them. And you should be like, hell yeah. But you're not. You're just like, get this movie out of my face. So it's not going to win. Last Exorcism all the way, baby. Next. Oh, God. Doom, starring The Rock and Carl Urban, the dreaded adaptation of the awesome, legendary game of the same name. And then we got Ang Lee's The Hulk. Both of these movies have a lot of detractors, and they deserve that. They suck. Okay? They suck as what they're intended to be. Doom, however, sucks also as its own thing. The Hulk has some redeeming factors, okay? I don't think it's a good Hulk movie. But I think if it had been something else with a similar theme and didn't have those corny comic book elements like the turning pages and shit like that, I think it would have been a very cool movie. But the fact that it's linked to a character that even the general audience knows a lot about just makes it uncool. You know what I'm saying? But Ang Lee's a very capable director. And you could see that if this had not been a Hulk movie, it could have been an interesting movie at the very least. Doom just stinks. It just sucks. It's not a good Doom movie, and it's not a good movie. It's like Ghost of Mars, only more shitty. I hate it. Now, there is a scene that everybody's like, that's cool, and that's the first-person shooter scene in Doom. It's not cool enough to save the movie. It sucks. Rock's bad in it. Everybody kind of sucks in it, except for my boy Carl Urban, who's trying his best to salvage garbage. I'm going to pick the Hulk just because, come on, man. Very reluctantly picking the Hulk. Next up, The Hills Have Eyes versus Avatar. The Hills Have Eyes. I'm not even going to explain it. Fuck that. Fuck Avatar. Next up, we got Jim Carrey in, I don't know why I said his name, A Series of Unfortunate Events. It was supposed to be one of multiple adaptations of the multiple books in that series of the same name. Versus Michael Bay's The Island. Now, you might be thinking, you went and saw another Michael Bay movie in the theater. Yes, I've seen quite a number of them in the theater. And The Island is one of the few times I didn't regret it. The Island's a pretty cool, little, kind of like dystopian future type of movie, and it's not very original. It cribs from a lot of stuff in that vein, but it's pretty darn good, man. It's well shot, and it only goes off into Michael Bay-isms every now and then. There's a chase sequence once our main characters escape this facility they're in that begins to descend into stupid Michael Bay territory, and Thankfully, it doesn't lose you completely, but it begins. But largely, the movie, for Michael Bay, kind of reins itself in, and the cast is great. So, yeah, it's a pretty good movie, man. I enjoy it. I'm not ashamed to say that. A Series of Unfortunate Events. I hear that in terms of being an adaptation, it changes a lot of stuff. But I don't know, because I didn't read the books. But I can appreciate something on its own, too. But since I didn't read the books, I can only appreciate it as I saw it. And I enjoyed the shit out of it, man. I thought it was very whimsical. And, there was a Burton-esque quality to it at a time when Tim Burton himself wasn't making good Tim Burton movies. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have seen The Island more times than I have A Series of Unfortunate Events, so that's fresh in my mind. But because Unfortunate Events doesn't descend into that moment of Michael Bay-ness, I'll give it to that. Even though I kind of want to pick The Island. But I'm going to go with Unfortunate Events. Next up, Quantum of Solace, as some people call it. It's like, what? Why are you saying Solace? I've heard it so many times. It's Solace. Solace? What is even that? Solace. Anyway, Quantum of Solace, the follow-up to Casino Royale. That's a big motherfucking movie to follow up. And what did they do? They try to make a Bourne movie in terms of the editing. Shit! Awful editing, man. And then they try to make like a movie that had kind of like an agenda in terms of its message. But it was so heavy-handed in terms of the product that you're like, this just sucks now. You know what I'm saying? I have no problem with agendas in movies like Al does. Because most movies have that inherently because they're written by people which have opinions. But anyway, the point is, in this case, it blew nut. And it was just a dull, ugly, horribly directed and shot movie. And a real letdown, especially following Casino Royale. So that's not going to win for sure. And it's definitely not going to win when it's up against Stephen fucking Chow's Kung Fu Hustle. It's like a martial arts movie from the 70s meets Looney Tunes, man, and it's fantastic. Stephen Chow in general, if you've not experienced, check out his stuff, especially stuff like Shaolin Soccer and stuff like that. Kung Fu Hustle is, if you've never seen Chow's movies, it's gonna be a unique experience. It's fantastic, hilarious, great. Kung Fu Hustle wins all the way, baby. All right, next up. Punisher Warzone. This was the last Marvel movie before the MCU started. And they just kind of like scuttled that boy into the theaters. I remember going to the theater and it didn't even have a little placard so where you could see the showtimes. It just had a white paper that said Warzone on it. No Punisher, nothing, just Warzone. They just dropped this like a turd, man. And I get it. They were like, it's time to, actually start doing something, be a little bit more organized. But it's a kind of a shame because the Punisher hadn't gotten good movies up until then. There's that crappy Dolph Lundgren one that might as well just be a standard 80s movie. And then there was the Thomas Jane one, which granted did adapt a number of the beginning issues of Garth Ennis' run on Punisher. But it was like shitty, dude. There was something about it that just wasn't working. And Travolta as the villain was egregious. Terrible, man. And it still had that Avia Rod, like lame early comic movie feel to it. I don't like the Thomas Jane Punisher, though Thomas Jane would have probably been a cool Punisher had the movie not sucked. But then there was this. Now, don't get me wrong, Punisher Warzone's not a masterpiece. But if you read The Punisher in the 90s especially, War Journal, Warzone, and his own title, the eponymous title, you will immediately feel like you're reading one of those comics. Now, granted, it's a pretty unimportant movie in terms of the content, but it literally feels like you picked up one of those comics, read it, and it finished in one issue. And you gotta kind of appreciate that about this movie. Plus, old boy as Punisher, he looks like him. He just feels like the Punisher, man. You know what I'm saying? Of the comics. This movie is literally a comic brought to life. So I really like that about it. That being said, it's facing Black Dynamite, and Black Dynamite is possibly the only reason to accept that Michael Jai White has an acting career. Now, don't get me wrong. Michael Jai White's cool. He's an awesome stuntman and, martial artist. Love him in that respect. but his acting stinks. But the good thing is that he used his, influence to make this movie that harkens back to 1970s exploitation, blaxploitation movie specifically. And man, it is such a pitch perfect replica of those movies, while at the same time being very self-aware and tongue-in-cheek and downright fucking hilarious, man. And his bad acting works for him here because, those movies didn't have good actors. And he's like hamming it up so much that it actually freaking works and almost seems like brilliant, good acting portraying bad acting. Black Dynamite is fucking hilarious. If you haven't seen it, it's great. It's winning, guy. It's winning. Next up, we got Daybreakers from the... what was their damn name, man? These cats that did this alien movie called Undead. Forget their name. Whatever. They're brothers. This is a vampire movie. I believe it was their U.S. debut. And then we have The Strangers, a home invasion movie that made quite the impression with its very Carpenter-esque tone, early Carpenter-esque tone, especially alluding to Halloween and stuff. But it had a much more bleak, anchor to its goings-on. Really nicely shot, kind of like a slow burn in terms of the way it's building atmosphere. Strangers is just a superior directed project. Daybreakers, hell of a lot of fun. If you haven't seen it, check it out. You might really enjoy it. It's got Willem Dafoe as a guy named Elvis. Come on, guy. But The Strangers is a superior movie through and through. And yes, specifically, this is the 2000s Stranger. Was it 2008, 2009? Not the recent remake, which I don't even want to see, man. It's just... why? But anyway, The Strangers wins. Next up, Rambo, a.k.a. John Rambo, a.k.a. Rambo 4, versus Red Dragon. Red Dragon is an adaptation of a book of the same name that was previously adapted as Manhunter from Michael Mann, which is a very good Hannibal Lecter movie before Anthony Hopkins became Hannibal Lecter. Pretty damn good. I guess at one point you could have considered it a prequel to Hopkins Lecter, but now you can't because they made one. And I gotta say, man, I know there's a lot of people that like to shit on this one because of who directed it. Just look it up and look up why. But I quite enjoyed Red Dragon, man. I think it's very well made. Edward Norton's great in it. Yeah, man. I don't really see the hate towards Red Dragon. I think it's a great fucking adaptation. And, it allowed Hopkins to kind of ground the character a bit more after taking him kind of like into wild gonzo territory in Hannibal. So, yeah, Red Dragon, very good movie. John Rambo, though, man, I know that Rambo movies right after the first one became much more about like this big, violence fest basically. But man, Rambo really like kind of joined the two strong elements of a Rambo movie. That is to make a point about something relevant to the mind of a soldier or the struggles of another nations and peoples, and also to give you a violent motherfucking movie. And boy howdy is Rambo violent. The theatrical cut, by the way, is more violent than the director's cut. And it's quite enjoyable to see Rambo go full Rambo. You know what I'm saying? This is a hard one. I think Red Dragon is a better movie. But man, I can't deny the delight of seeing Rambo kick assholes' asses. So I'm going to go with Rambo. Next up, we got Saw 7, better known as Saw 3D, the final installment, at least it was supposed to be, for the Saw series, versus The Devil's Rejects, Rob Zombie's a second installment in the Firefly family saga. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not even a fight. Saw 7 was a very weak final, quote-unquote, final entry into the series. Very disappointing in a lot of ways. And, it just wasn't anywhere as good as it could have or should have been. Devil's Rejects, however, even people that don't like Rob Zombie's stuff will more than likely admit that this is a damn good exploitation style, gritty as hell, dirty, weird, ugly movie in the good way because it's a horror movie, you know. And it is, man. It's unsettling. It can be funny at times. It really evokes an old school exploitation vibe. It's got some stunning imagery in it. It's got all the markers that Rob Zombie is known for, but before people hated that stuff, or if they hated it, it's done at least well enough for them not to. It's just really well done, and it's got one of my favorite characters in Sheriff Wydell. Devil's Rejects, man, without a doubt, wins that one. Cronenberg's A History of Violence. That's a comic book adaptation for those that don't know, or graphic novel, I guess in this case, and a damn good one. And of course, David Cronenberg is renowned more for his body horror centric era in the 80s, especially. But History of Violence, among some of his other dramas like Eastern Promises and stuff like that, they all deal with the same kind of issue. The idea of some latent nastiness lying inside of you, waiting to burst out. Only, it's not so gory and visceral as those old movies. So History of Violence, I think it's an excellent thing, source for Cronenberg to adapt. And Viggo Mortensen in the lead is fucking excellent, dude. Plus, it's got my boy Ed Harris. I mean, it's just a great... Oh, man, it's so good, man. I love A History of Violence. And it's going up against some hefty competition here with Wolf Creek. One of those Aussie movies that kind of creeps out from Australia every now and then and goes, hey, don't forget us, we exist. Wolf Creek is pretty potent. I love Wolf Creek. But you can't compete with the power of Cronenberg and this great cast doing great things. So I'm going to give it to A History of Violence. Next up, Saw 6 versus Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Look, we all know Crouching is going to win. It's a film that was very important. It's very well made. Awesome example of its genre. And, again, changed the landscape of Hollywood when it was imported over here. Still remember the crowds just audibly gasping at something that, the general audience wasn't very familiar with, or at the very least hadn't seen in a very long time. That was very exciting to see people react to it that way. Saw 6, I'm going to give it its flowers because Saw 6 was a much needed return to a good Saw movie. It had followed Saw 5, which was god-awful, possibly the worst Saw movie of them all. And I mean that in every respect. But Saw 6 was really good, and it was one of those that, really depended on John's character, that is to say Jigsaw, and it gave him a lot of backstory that really humanized him. It was a very good movie. It was a very good entry, and it's a shame that because Saw 5 sucked so hard, not enough people went and saw that. But anyway, whatever. It's sandwiched in between two kind of turds. So Saw 6, though, deserves some accolades. Crouching Tiger's going to win. Next up, Cronenberg's back. Eastern Promises. Fucking excellent. Viggo Mortensen playing a... I don't want to ruin it for you if you haven't seen it. But see that movie. Oh, man. Again, going back to that Cronenbergian theme of something dark and potentially destructive just hibernating inside of us, only in this setting, in deep in Russia. It's got a naked man battle, that also. But anyway, this is one of Viggo Mortensen's best acting roles. Just stunning work, man, on his behalf, and one of Cronenberg's best directed films. Now it's going up against Baby Mama, which is a very cool movie, very funny movie from Tina Fey, very clever movie, starring her and Amy Poehler. They're magic together. But I mean, it's gonna fucking die at the feet of Eastern Promises. So Eastern Promises. Oh man, two mega stinkers. We got Ghost Rider, the first one versus Resident Evil Apocalypse, the second entry into the Resident Evil series. There's no saving any of these. They're horrendous. Resident Evil Apocalypse was one of those times where I felt like just leaving the theater. And Ghost Rider, I was just like, this is awful. This movie never starts, basically. Everything's like, check out my cool looking garbage, and then nothing happens. The fights are nonsense. There's this scene where him and and old boy, what's his name? Sam Elliott as the gravedigger. He's telling him like, yo, basically he's like pumping him up, like, let's go do this, baby. And they ride off together, and you're like, oh shit, these two guys are gonna go kick ass together as Ghost Riders. And then fucking Gravedigger just goes off on his own route, and you're like, what was all that hype about? This movie sucks. This is not. This was when Nicolas Cage was really bombing super hard too, and it was not funny or enjoyable. Eva Mendes acting is horrible in it. Blackheart is terrible. It's just bad, dude. I'm gonna have to give it to Ghost Rider because at least Resident Evil never, that its whole series never pretended to want to be good. It was just, let's watch chicks kick ass, and that ass happens to be monsters. That's all that was. And I guess it does that still, even though it does it shittily. But Ghost Rider just blows chunks. Did I pick Ghost Rider to win? Ah, shit! Well, anyway, either way, that movie's gonna... if I had picked Resident Evil Apocalypse, it was gonna lose anyway against whoever goes up next. Whatever. There's no winners in that one. Next up, we got Walk the Line versus Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. Okay. There's a caveat here. The Beginning is a prequel to the 2003 remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Beginning is good. It's brutal as fuck. It's bleak as all hell. There's no hope in that movie. That's a movie where you're like, okay, I can forgive that 2003 is not very good after all, because it allowed this to exist. And this existing makes 2003 kind of like a little bit better just because this is a prequel. But this is a hell of a brutal prequel. However, here's the caveat. This is the theatrical cut, which is good. But the unrated cut, that's where you want to be. So, this is a ticket tournament, so it can't... It's not going to win against Walk the Line, which is fucking fantastic. I'm a big Johnny Cash fan. I think this is the movie that got Guntik on Johnny Cash, on his own. So that's cool. Joaquin Phoenix is great as Cash. Reese Witherspoon is great. I'm going to pick Walk the Line. But there is a world where maybe I would have picked Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning if it was the unrated cut. Walk the Line wins. Next up, we got G.I. Joe. Man, two stinkers. G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra. Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. There's a cool ending in Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. Otherwise, it's a poor copy of Terminator 2 that nobody needed. Okay? That's what that movie is. Very subpar shit. Excuse me. Then we got G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra. Possibly the movie that ended... what's his name? I even forgot his name, man. Director of The Mummy. What is his name? Stephen Sommers' career. This movie probably ended it. Shit, and deservedly so. It's not good. Here's the thing, though. I can watch it and be like, that fun thing is happening, and that's it. But it sucks. Don't get me wrong. It sucks. Major ass. So, nobody really wins in this one. It's a Ghost Rider versus Resident Evil 2 situation. I'm going to pick Terminator 3 just because. I mean, really, both of those stink. Next up, we got Land of the Dead, George Romero's return to zombies back in the early 2000s versus High Tension. Alexandra Aja's movie that kind of brought him over to this side of the pond, made an impression that way. Man, this is a hard one. I was one of the supporters of Land of the Dead. First of all, just in general, this would have been the first time I saw a new Romero movie in the theaters. I grew up with Romero on VHS. And that's how I saw Romero, because that's all that was available to me. This was my first Romero movie at the theater. And I remember some people hating on this thing and being like, well, at least we got to see Romero zombies with, fucking a budget. That was basically all they would want to say. Some people were saying like, oh, the messaging is too heavy. And I'm like, what movies have you been watching? You know what I'm saying? I love Land of the Dead. It's a fucking romp and a half, and it's still a Romero movie through and through. It's got great fucking gore. It's got a fun cast. It's fun, man. That being said, High Tension, man, I really like High Tension. I know some people have a problem with this, or like the twist is too inane and this and that. Man, but it's a hell of a good movie, and it looks great, and it plays great. It's got some brutal scenes. I'm going to go with High Tension, man. Even though I love Land of the Dead. High Tension wins. Next up, we got 30 Days of Night and A Hero, another import from the East that was brought to us, thankfully, by Quentin Tarantino, intact. And that was a really fun time in theater, too. It is, however, a movie that is very much not trying to, bristle the Chinese government's hairs on their back. And, in fact, it's basically trying to glorify everything Chinese that even its people might be like, that's not cool. But it's a cool movie. But 30 Days of Night feels like a John Carpenter movie that was not directed by John Carpenter. Not just because of the weird Arctic setting, but there's just that vibe to it. Plus, it's got some really cool vampire action. It's a great adaptation of the comics. So it wins on several levels. I'm picking 30 Days of Night. Next up, a comic adaptation, graphic novel, if you will. 300, this time a Frank Miller adaptation. Remember when everybody liked 300 and now they pretend like they hate it? Yeah, that was a thing. Anyway, I'm not pretending. I love 300. It is basically the graphic novel. And I liked the graphic novel, so there you go. And Dreamcatcher. God damn it. This movie almost ruined the career of Lawrence Kasdan, man. Dreamcatcher is a very bad Stephen King book. I'm sad to say it, but it is very bad. Stephen King tackles a lot of the similar subjects, similar themes a lot of the time, and sometimes to great effect. But this is not one of those times. Dreamcatcher is basically it, crossed with Needful Things on ice, and it has ass weasels, as he calls them, or shit weasels, I should say. And the book was not good. It was written while he was on drugs, and by that I mean medication, not the other drugs, because if it was the other drugs, it would have probably been awesome. But, yeah, it sucks, bro. It sucks balls. And here's the thing. The book sucks. And when they announced that Kasdan was going to direct and adapt, I was like, oh, maybe he can fix the book and the movie will be cool. Nah, homie. It's worse. It's fucking awful, man. Dreamcatcher's terrible. 300 wins all the way, period. The remake of Assault on Precinct 13. Assault on Precinct 13, by the way, one of my favorite Carpenter movies. A neo-Western. It has a gritty exploitation vibe. It's awesome, dude. If you haven't seen that Carpenter flick, see it. This, however, was the remake, and I haven't seen this since it came out on DVD back in the day. And I saw it in theater, obviously, and those 2 times, I just remember being like, this is not that bad. And 2, I remember everybody getting shot right here in the head, and I was like, what is that? Why is everybody getting shot specifically there? So not a very good memory to hold. I have the Blu-ray, so I'll revisit it one day. But even if I had a fond memory of it, which I don't, Collateral is one of my favorite Michael Mann movies. And it was the first time where I was like, okay, I can stop hating Tom Cruise, even though I want to. Because he was just good in it, man. Collateral is excellent. And, by the way, it was also one of the few times where I was like, well, I guess I'll let Jamie Foxx be alright, So, Collateral wins all the way, man. It's a great movie. Next up, Fincher's Panic Room versus Rodriguez's Machete. Look, man, Panic Room is obviously the superior film in terms of, David Fincher directed it. I mean, when does this guy fail? When he fails, it's okay because his failures are better than your average movie maker's greatest successes, so whatever. He didn't fail with Panic Room. Panic Room was a really good movie. It's got my boy Forrest freaking Whitaker in it, Jodie Foster, just a strong cast all around. Great movie, fantastic. Yes, it's the superior of these two, but I gotta pick Machete. Why? Because it's everything I ever wanted in a movie, and it happened, man. So I'm picking Machete. Next, Spider-Man 3. Easily the least good of the 3 Spider-Man movies from Sam Raimi, but I think unfairly maligned. Yes, it's overstuffed. We all know that. We've had decades, to get over it. Watching the movie as it is, even back then I was like, this is not as bad as people are saying. But it is a flawed movie, but I do enjoy it. Children of Men, though. Alfonso Cuarón adaptation of this novel of the same name. Clive Owen. Man. Just the camera work alone makes this movie superior to any competition it's got. Cuarón's got quite the eye behind the camera. We've seen it, in countless of his movies. But this was the first time I saw a Cuarón movie in the theater, and man, is it fucking amazing. I love Children of Men. Brilliantly shot, very well paced, bleak, and yet hopeful at the same time. I love Children of Men, and it will win. Oh, it will win. Next up, The Ruins, an adaptation of a Scott Smith novel that was adapted to screenplay by Scott Smith. And when I watched it, I hated it. Why? I had read the novel, and I was like, I know he adapted the novel. Then I went and saw the movie, and for some reason, the character motivations were switched for the characters. And I was like, why? What's the use of that? So it was an annoying watch because the novel was so fresh. Again, don't get me wrong. I'm 100% okay with changes. You know what I'm saying? In movies. That's not the issue. It was just how unnecessary these changes felt like. Like, why? You're just changing the character motivations around. There's no reason for that. Also, it felt kind of like neutered a little bit. However, later the unrated cut came out, and by then I had time to get used to the idea that, these motivations were just frivolously shifted around, and the unrated cut had a little bit more teeth to it, felt a little bit closer to the novel, and I really liked that one. And now it's a movie I thoroughly enjoy, but we're not judging the unrated cut, we're judging the theatrical cut, and 40-Year-Old Virgin is who it's gladiating against here. And 40-Year-Old Virgin's fucking funny, dude. It's a movie that really captured the zeitgeist of the time for me and my friends. So I have very fond memories in that respect. Now, granted, I haven't revisited a lot of the Apatow era movies in a while, so they might not have aged well. But I'm going off memory. I'm going with 40-Year-Old Virgin. Next up, X-Men Origins Wolverine versus The Mummy Returns. Oh, boy. Couple of sequels with lots of problems. Here's the thing. Both of these movies have good stuff in them, but the problems are, really present in the forefront. I did revisit both of these quite recently, and Returns, it just feels like a damned shame that they dropped the ball so hard after a classic like The Mummy. So it feels more egregious. Origins has some fucking problems, let me tell you. But the good stuff plays a lot better than I remembered it, especially like the Sabretooth stuff. There's some really great imagery in it. It's overstuffed, the movie is, unfortunately. And Deadpool, the way they portray him there, you just gotta forget that it's supposed to be Deadpool. Just put that to the side, and you can have some fun with Origins. So I'm gonna pick Origins, but we can accept that both these movies are not great. Next. Oh, we're coming back around. Now we're facing off winners against winners. We got House of Flying Daggers versus Open Range. Oh man, this is quite the face-off. Two great dramas in their very particular genres. This is hard. Flying Daggers is a beautiful movie. Beautiful movie. But there's just something about fantastic Western. I'm picking Open Range, but I'm telling you, Flying Daggers could have won. Open Range. Next up, Darkness versus Casino Royale. This is where Darkness goes into the darkness. Casino Royale wins all the way, baby. Just a superior flick all through. Out. Daniel Craig, by the way, beast as Bond. Next up, we got Underworld 3 versus Rise of the Lycans. Versus Hostel. And you already know Hostel's going to lose because, like I said, it's puerile shit. It did not age well at all. Underworld wins. Fun fantasy monster versus monster movie. What more do you want? Apocalypto versus Dawn of the Dead. I love Apocalypto, man. I just love it. So rich on so many levels. I hate to say goodbye to Dawn of the Dead, but Apocalypto's winning that one. Alright, Blade 2 versus The Last Exorcism. Blade 2, man. Yeah, I mean, it's got fun mythology, fun characters. You know, Blade's not the only cool one here, man. You know, we got the Return of Whistler, which just one of my favorite characters in that series. Period. We got the whole, what did they call them? The Blood Pack. You know, just colorful characters throughout, and Del Toro really knew how to build out that world. I'm going with Blade 2. Ang Lee's The Hulk versus The Hills Have Eyes. The Hills Have Eyes, one of the best remakes. It fine-tuned everything that the original was. The original's a fun exploitation movie from Wes Craven, but Hills Have Eyes remake from Alejandro Aja, by the way, the guy that made High Tension, it just really did, as I said, fine-tune all the elements and actually make it feel like it was about something, and yet still keep that nastiness to it, that edge to it, and yet also still be very loyal to the source material. Hills Have Eyes wins. Unfortunate Events versus Kung Fu Hustle. This is where the events get unfortunate for unfortunate events. Stephen Chow's Kung Fu Hustle is fucking entertainment at its finest. It's winning. Next up, Black Dynamite versus The Strangers. Oh, man. This is going to have to either be quality over favoritism or me just blind clicking. Look, I'm going to say this. The Strangers is the superior film. And it's excellently crafted. It's tense, suspenseful, beautiful almost to look at, and hella dark. Well, Black Dynamite is right up my alley, man. I love blaxploitation. I love exploitation films in general. And it's just such a great send-up of them, and yet also is one of them, Black Dynamite. Rambo versus Devil's Rejects. As cool as it is to see Rambo kick evil ass, there's just something inimitable about The Devil's Rejects. It's a grotesque, dirty movie, and it feels uncomfortable to watch. Or it should. And if it doesn't, there might be a screw loose up there. It's quite well made. It's despite it being like exploitation style heavy. I'm gonna go with Devil's Rejects. History of Violence versus Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I'm sorry, you lovable Asian bastards. You made a great movie. Ang Lee, behind the director's chair. It's a fantastic film, but History of Violence, it's visceral, it's mean, it just feels weighty and purposeful. I'm going with A History of Violence. Eastern Promises versus Ghost Rider. I mean, shit, it could have been Turd versus Ghost Rider, and Turd would have won. Eastern Promises, man, masterpiece. Walk the Line versus Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. Let me see. I wonder who will win. Walk the Line, baby. It's not even a competition. High Tension versus 30 Days of Nights. Two very style-heavy movie horror flicks. But High Tension, I think, is the superior achievement. And just alone on like, the acting, there's something really that I respond to a lot in High Tension. I really like High Tension there. 300 versus Collateral. This is, cool comic style versus a character thriller. There's some scenes in Collateral that are just fantastic and that defy the standard tropes for a thriller. Michael Mann's Collateral is the superior movie, but dude, 300 is hella fun, so I'm gonna be sacrilegious as fuck and pick 300, guy. But Collateral is a superior movie. Oh man, shit. Now I'm getting punished for that choice. Machete versus Children of Men. Look, Machete's hella fun. Like I said, it was a dream come true to see that on the screen. But Children of Men is too good to bury. Children of Men wins, man. 40-Year-Old Virgin versus X-Men Origins Wolverine. We already know that 40-year-old is going to win. So there you go. We're coming back around. Let's get down in nitty gritty again. Now it's Open Range versus Casino Royale. Casino Royale was a game changer. It took a storied character and just completely reframed him in the public consciousness for years to come. And it's a standout film. And even though I love Open Range with all my heart, I'm gonna pick Casino Royale. Apocalypto versus Underworld: Rise of the Lycans. This is where the werewolves and the vamps die at the altar because Apocalypto is gorgeous. Love it. Blade 2 versus The Hills Have Eyes. Man, very different movies, both in the horror vein. Blade is dripping with coolness, world building. Hills is a nasty little movie with, some social political subtext that's worked very well in there so that it's not overbearing. This is hard. The horror hound in me will say Hills Have Eyes, and I think I'm going to regret that. But anyway, next. Kung Fu Hustle versus Black Dynamite. Two very out there, versions of their genres going head to head, very apropos. Kung Fu Hustle, though, this is where Black Dynamite comes to die, baby. Kung Fu Hustle is just so endearing. Love it. Next, we got The Devil's Rejects versus History of Violence. Somebody has to kill the rejects, and it's going to be my boy Vigo. History of Violence, bro. Great. Eastern Promises versus Walk the Line. Oof. Eastern Promises, man. I'm sorry, but that's the winner right there. High Tension versus 300. Again, the horror hound in me is going to give it to High Tension. And 300 is fun as hell. But yeah, High Tension's just, it's kind of special, man. I really like that movie. Next, come on, man. 40-Year-Old Virgin's dead, guy. Children of Men's going to win. Okay? Coming back around, baby. Casino Royale versus Apocalypto now. Who will win? We're going to go... Man. This wouldn't be the majority choice, but I'm picking Apocalypto. Love it, man. I'll tell you. Hills Have Eyes versus Kung Fu Hustle. Dude. Kung Fu Hustle, bro. Just... If you can't have fun at Kung Fu Hustle, then you must be Al Smith. Because there's no way you could suck the fun out of it, bro. It's just so fun. Fun, I say. Next. Oh, two Vigo Cronenberg classics going head to head. Oh, man. Eastern Promises here is easily the superior film. But they're both fucking excellent. I'm going to base my choice solely on the Vigo performance. And he's great in both of these. But Eastern Promises, he's deep into that character. Much like his character is deep in... Well, watch the movie. So I'm going to pick Eastern Promises. High Tension versus Children of Men. I'm sorry, High Tension, but Children of Men is a masterpiece. I'm picking Master. I'm picking Children of Men. All right, we're coming back around. Apocalypto versus Kung Fu Hustle. Oh, man. Is this where Kung Fu Hustle dies? This is... I'm gonna pick Apocalypto because not only my love for it, but because it feels like something you have to see in the theater. I'm gonna pick Apocalypto. Eastern Promises versus Children of Men. Okay, let me tell you this. Acting-wise, Eastern Promises run circles around Children of Men. That's not to say Children of Men is a slouch. Great cast. The direction Children of Men is exceptional. But, now, of course, that doesn't mean Eastern Promises doesn't have that either. I'm going to pick Eastern Promises, man. Oof, I just had to pull a Band-Aid there. All right, coming back around. Slimming down that bracket. Let's see. Apocalypto versus Eastern. Superior film. I'm still going to give it to Apocalypto. Again, Eastern, the better film. But Apocalypto, again, feels like a cinematic movie. It feels like a movie that I loved watching in the theater. Picking that one. And that was it, guys. Didn't realize that was the end of that. So right now, from part one, the winner is none other than Apocalypto. Stay tuned for part two to see who's the winner of that. And subsequently, part 3 to see who the winner of that. And then we'll face all 3 against each other. In the meantime, I'm out. Goodbye.